I'm gonna go to Jen's slides. There we go. Jen, just let me know when to change.
Okay, thanks, Lenny. So I know I've spoken with the Planners Forum about CDTC's Smart Communities program in the past, but I just wanted to give a brief overview and introduction of it. CDTC started to kind of explore smart cities and technology integration into the transportation system in 2017, when as a region we worked together to submit an application for USDOT Smart City Challenge. It was unsuccessful, but it did kind of pave the way for us to continue looking into how as a region we can explore different emerging technologies. Our relationship with the U.S. Department of Energy and our Clean Communities Coalition provided another opportunity. We had some funding to start some smart cities conversations in the region and work with cities like Schenectady and Saratoga Springs on doing some planning and discussing how to make it more region-wide. We launched a Smart Communities Task Force in 2018 and a Smart Communities program that provided funding for Smart Communities projects. That solicitation was released in late 2018, and then we kicked off the Saratoga Springs Guidebook, which we'll be discussing today, in 2019. Next slide, please, Lenny.
Okay, here we go.
So leveraging technology and adopting and adapting new technologies is a new vision's principle and something that we see as important as we develop this next generation transportation system here in the region. Next slide, please. And CDTC has maintained the Smart Communities task in the UPWP, so we will be making up to $75,000 available again for new studies and projects. And we're interested in, having a better understanding of what kind of assistance local governments need to move technology integration forward. We've talked to some communities and we have, some sort of idea on what's kind of, what the obstacles are to adopting new technologies and integrating them into systems and getting them to work within like the operations and everything else in their town, city, or village. But, if you are interested in these types of projects or programs and have questions, please get in touch and let me know what kind of assistance or resources are needed to move forward. Okay, next slide, Lenny. So I don't think Tina's on yet, so I'll talk about Tina's slides and why Saratoga Springs applied for assistance through the Smart Communities program. So you may be familiar with Saratoga Springs and their historic nature, and if you've ever noticed the lighting, there is kind of a mixture of different kinds of street lights, and they wanted to pursue converting to LEDs just like many other communities. Next slide, please. However, there was a lot of information that was missing to allow them to kind of to make a conversion and do it the right way. So they were looking to develop an inventory, figure out who owns what, because there were different types of ownership and maintenance agreements depending upon different areas of the city, and determine going forward, do they want to continue to own or do they want to continue to rent? What are the benefits of each? And then what else could be achieved by converting to LED? Were there other technologies available that could assist with achieving other goals within the city? The city has a smart cities plan, and since this was a CDTC supported project, we were interested in seeing how could LED lighting help with traffic and particularly pedestrian safety at night, electric vehicle charging, and other potential benefits of technology and operations. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Saratoga Springs has a smart city plan. I believe they now even have a 2.0, which is an updated plan. They've moved a lot of their projects forward, and one of their goals was converting city traffic and streetlights to LEDs. So this was part of that, implementing that. Next slide, please. So the city of Saratoga Springs took advantage of the opportunity through the CDTC's Smart Communities program to help them, make that leap to LEDs and explore what their options are and what makes most sense for them, and how they can get the most out of that conversion project. Okay, next slide, Lenny. I think this is you guys now.
Thanks, Jen. This is Kathy Ember. I'm founding principal Planning for Places. I served as project director on this project. And with me today is Lenny Schwendiger, who is from the International Nighttime Design Initiative. And Lenny's going to go through a little bit more detail and provide a brief introduction to the guidebook itself. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the development process for the guidebook. We started out, as Jen mentioned, in the fall of 2019. And we also held 3 study advisory committee meetings throughout the project. In the spring, we had a 30-day public review period, and following some changes, the guidebook was released in May. And with that, I will turn it over to Lenny.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kathy. It's been a great experience with all of the bodies involved, Planning for Places, CDTC, the City of Saratoga Springs, and I'm really happy to represent International Nighttime Design Initiative today to present a condensed version of the guidebook. And I want to encourage you to download it today and take a look at the details. So where did it all start? This idea of converting to LED started with the New York State Public Service Commission's legislation change that allowed municipalities to purchase their street lighting and public lighting and gain more control over it. In 2018, the governor created a state program to encourage the light conversion and smart technology use. So we have both the conversion to the LED, which saves energy, and the controls that are provided by smart technology. In turn, NYPA was tasked to implement a smart street lighting program. So there is your support. Now on the right, and I hope you can see my cursor. Can you nod your head if you do? Okay, great. So here is the URL on the CDTC website to download the guidebook. So the foundation of the program and of the guidebook is, number one, conversion to LED. And that helps us meet sustainability goals. It also helps us meet financial goals because there is a cost savings due to the reduction of your energy bill. But the little known fact, and you'll read about it, is that the reduced operations and maintenance efforts provide a great savings. So how do you get that? You get that with a longer life lamp or light source, and you have lights that are reporting back to base, reporting back to a computer base saying, I'm broken. And that in turn cuts back on your citizen complaints and 2, trucks trawling for broken streetlights. So that alone actually is a huge money saving. How about the transfer of ownership? The NYPA incentive program is very full on. It's what we call turnkey. And so they have services from the lighting audit, the count and the identification of the lighting you already have, through design, environmental services, to financing. They actually provide financing, and now they have a new program for maintenance. So this is a very supportive program. It's also incentivized. There are reductions in the equipment purchase. There are also, though, third-party options, other companies and manufacturers who will also provide some of those services. Sometimes that. Hey, let's start from the beginning, which is really about lighting. Let's talk about night as a place. Let's talk about nighttime design. What are the conditions of night? What are the atmospheres in your town? What's the difference between your CBD and your residential area? Is there any difference in terms of lighting? Let's begin to distinguish or make legible or placemake with light. That is possible, and that in turn will engender welcome. We love to say welcome, which includes, of course, safety, whether we're talking about perception of safety, safety crossing the street, a feeling of being secure, a feeling that you are wanted and that it's an inclusive place, that you are recognized and you recognize others. This is what placemaking with light can help with. That in turn will help us with public health, walkability, increasing pedestrian access, increasing sociability. Hopefully in the post-pandemic world, we're going to come up with the right solutions that we can continue social relationships after dark. And that in turn, of course, leads to economic vitality. Have you ever thought about the nighttime as the place of culture, the place of movies, the place of theater, as well as the place of nightclubs and late night activities? Later open hours with better lighting is not impossible. And of course, those of you who have city events, let's move them into the night. Let's feel welcome and safe. Now, so in the diagram here, we have a representation of an eight-corner post stop and the representation of a street light. Either and both of these light luminaires will provide good lighting or bad lighting, and the light pole itself is going to be an armature for the responsive smart technologies. So what is smart? It's a really overused word. We could say connected or responsive as well, or networked. In this case, we have a system that is centrally managed. So it's not just each street light by itself that has to be checked or has to work. We have a system. It's infrastructure. We get that proactive maintenance we talked about. We get additional energy saving, by the way, with dimming and this adaptable lighting, which I'm going to go into more. Most city goals or community goals are to create a holistic and streamlined set of town services. And I think you might have heard of, those of you who have heard of, you know, oh my gosh, it's magic. We'll have better traffic control. We'll have better rubbish pickup. Our parking will become magically better. Almost, but not quite. The devices that we can install and network and control include quantification, how many cars, what time, circulation, who's where, when. You know, having the quantitative information helps us devise a plan. And for, you know, zoning, for programs, it's the metrics that we can provide new kinds of public space plans. We also, our trusty light pole here can hold wireless hubs, EV charging, digital signage, emergency call stations. So there are a lot of different devices that we can provide our community with. And then we can also monitor environmental conditions, which is very exciting, and hopefully then change and adapt to them. So what I want to say is that this infrastructural system called lighting is wonderful and complex, but it isn't magic, as I mentioned. It doesn't work by itself. And so I just want to underscore the challenge of interagency collaboration. We may be talking about police, we may be talking about transportation, we may be talking about communications with signage. These could be different departments and different agencies. In some cases, for example, Boston and New York City, they've actually created a new unit to coordinate their smart technologies. Okay, number one in our program and our quest for nighttime design and smart technologies really starts with community engagement, which I know as planners you're all involved with on a regular basis. I'm all for active learning and active community engagement. So what you see here is our walk in downtown Saratoga Springs to learn from the stakeholders what is loved. Where are the gaps? Are people congregating more in the dark or more in the bright? What's missing, not only functionally, but atmospherically and experientially? How is it to walk across the street? Is this intersection lit the way it should be? So it's a two-way street of learning from each other. The designers and light strategists learning from the community, and the community in turn learning about the vocabulary of light and the concerns that they will have to engage with. Pilots are important. Before your pilot, you want to measure the activity and the light characteristics through the night. Do we have night workers in this neighborhood? Do we have absolutely quiet in this other neighborhood? Would we prefer it was more active? You know, do we prefer the quiet? You know, what about those rowdy nightclubbers? Is there something we can do about that? Measuring the activities and lighting conditions is your existing conditions test. For a pilot where we set up the smart lighting, we need proof of operation and interoperability. All those devices we talked about, they have to talk to each other. They have to be controlled. And no matter what anyone says, manufacturers or, you know, our friends at the Power Authority that might be helping you with support, you want to see this in action. You want to make sure the reporting of the characteristics are working. Also the aesthetics, that means the light pole form, the luminaire forms, that we like them, and the qualities of light are what we want. Do we want cool light? Do we want warm light? Do we want cool light in some places and warm light in others? This is light quality. And then nighttime design, this idea of placemaking with light. Can we provide more legibility? Can we provide better pedestrian experience? So you would do surveys with your citizens, you would invite them to the proof of concept pilots. We would make some decisions about downtown. Perhaps we want it brighter and more active. Perhaps we want some areas less bright and active. Residentially, we might want to turn down the lights at 11 or midnight, or we might need to keep them up in a neighborhood where we have night workers or night shift, or you know, an adjoining institutional neighborhood with the academic night classes, hospitals, late night libraries. Wouldn't that be great? You know, and how to get to them. And so then the decision making about lighting quality is more nuanced for each type of district. We came up with 4 levels of deployment. On the left column, we have the basic. That is simply converting to LED, getting the energy savings, longer life lamps, less maintenance. And it includes smart ready. It includes some equipment that helps you move towards basic and advanced plus in the future, but perhaps your budget doesn't hold that for now. Or perhaps you don't know if you really want to have smart lighting and the challenges they'll provide with interagency collaboration. So basic plus and advanced are really 2 layers of control. And when we say control, again, that's reporting, levels of dimming, switching things on or off, systematic reduction of light levels on a timed basis, and the interconnectivity. So basic plus is simply proactive maintenance and the ability to have timed on and off. Advanced includes the dimming, which is a little more nuanced and leads to more placemaking. NYPA and National Grid provide both basic plus and advanced together in one program. Advanced Plus is the addition of the smart city technology. So if we're going to have, important to have the sensors, important to have the monitoring, EV stations, you can have those anyway. But if you want to interconnect all of that, if you want to interconnect the whole system with smart city devices, that we call Advanced Plus, just to help us understand levels of deployment. We come to the heart of the matter, which is how are we going to make these decisions? The first steps, we have 3 steps. First step engages the community into what it is that we need. What is the problem we're trying to solve? I don't know how many times I've heard this from all the smart city mavens and experts. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Is it about parking? Is it about security? Is it about placemaking? Really good notes here I'm going to check out here. Is it about centralized communications? Is it about traffic amelioration? What are the most important issues that smart networks and smart lighting can solve? By the end of step 1, you can leverage the program with prioritization, and you're ready to strategize. So part 2 is really an action plan. and learning from the case studies and the pilots to engage design and strategy services, to prioritize the technology, and to look at your fiscal plans and strategies. And by the end of 2, we want to have that pilot operational. In 3, we want to finalize that interagency management. We want to make sure we can actually deal with the incoming data and use it and leverage it and create new programs in the future. It's you know, I've been in workshops where New York City DOT says, well, we've got all this data, it's flowing in, but you know, actually interpreting it and using it, that is another step. That is a big step. So it makes sense to wonder about how you're going to leverage your smart cities network. By the end of the 3rd step, you should be ready to procure the technology and equipment and to install it. So that is my condensed version of the guidebook. And there's so many more subjects that are in the appendix that you can look into, from communications to ecology, and the support that you could get from the various agencies at your service. Giving it over to Kathy.
Thanks. So in addition to those items that Lenny has mentioned, we also had some case study sections. We included some examples from the city of Boston and the city of Syracuse, and then we also delved into some capital region examples, you know, from Schenectady to Kinderhook to Colony to Albany and Clifton Park. Albany bought their street lights recently. And I think the key takeaways is that lighting audits are really critical. A number of the case studies found that they had a different number of lights than they thought when they started doing a lighting audit, so that's really important. They also all approach things differently depending on what their needs were. So some communities worked with National Grid, some worked with NYPA, some worked with third-party installers. There are a variety of things you can do, a variety of technologies you can include and entities you can work with. And I think that's why the decision-making roadmap is important, to help you kind of pick what's the most appropriate thing for your community, to decide on who to work with and what type of technologies you want to install. So with that, we were just going to open it up to questions. If anyone had any questions for you know, Jen, Lenny, or myself, we're happy to answer them.